Can we say in church, go Titans? Okay, well, I'm feeling it, so I'm wanting 4-1. I don't know about you, and I know you're going, hurry up, kick off. Hey, it's so good to be back with you guys, and we're talking about this theme of searching for what? What in the world are you searching for? I told the early service, when I saw the theme, the thing that really jumped out at me was that I think sometimes when you speak, whether you speak in business meetings, you speak in churches, there are certain things that you have in your life that sometimes you feel like that God has stamped that and said, this is something that I want you, this is something unique to you that I want you to speak about, and I'm going to place you in certain instances where you're going to have an opportunity, and whether or not you do it's going to be up to you, but I'm going to give you that opportunity. I think this one this morning is something that is just branded on my spirit. It's something inside of me that throughout my comings and goings in life, it seems like that I cross people in search for this more than anything else that I find. I'm not even sure there's a GPS that knows this destination. I can't hit Siri and say, here's what I'm looking for. I think she'll say back, I'm sorry, I cannot help you with that. Don't you hate that when she says that? I changed mine to a guy's voice because I can go, what? Because I don't want to yell at a woman, you know. But I think we all come into a place like this where we're searching for something. And your something could be filled in the blank. I've been watching week after week on my laptop, so I'm actually here. And watching as Doug was been speaking and as those messages go through and what we're looking for. And then I got to my week. And I said, God, if there is something that I could say, what am I searching for? What would it be, Lord? What would you want me to say? And I came back to this, and in your outline, it's kind of weird. It says Trivial Pursuits in Search of, fill in the blank. Because I think we all have a journey we're on this morning, and I think we're all pursuing something this morning. And I wouldn't want to be so specific that I fill in the blank for you. That whatever it is that's on your mind and in your heart that captures your time, your energy, your finances, something is moving you toward a destination. And I think we all are in search of that. So I went to a chapter that probably is not read too much. It's the book of Ecclesiastes. And look at this in chapter 1, verse 2, what he says. Solomon, a wealthy guy, has been looking for the meaning of life, searching for the blank in his life. And he says this, meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher, utterly meaningless. He says that, by the way, 35 times. Everything is meaningless. Have a good day. There's a bucket of hope for you, isn't it? We're talking about a guy who had more money than Warren Buffett and Bill Gates. He could literally walk into a business meeting with those two guys and says, I'll take all that. And then some. He would receive every year, just in a bonus, 250 tons of gold. Okay, do the math. If gold is at $1,100 an ounce, and there's 16 ounces in a pound, and 1 ton weighs 2,000 pounds, I got my calculator out at my desk this morning, and I went, do. And you know what it said? Error. You can't calculate that. It's such a large number, and this was a bonus, this guy. Scholars said that he was so wealthy that silver in his kingdom would be used as gravel. Because everything he touched, he would have it made into gold. And yet he quotes these words and gives us this passage that says, meaningless, meaningless, utterly meaningless, everything is meaningless. Why? Because his fill in the blank may be different than ours, but he's searching for something, who knows what. The Barna Research Group went out and did a research and asked the average American, what would make your life more meaningful? The number one response from the average American today was, my life would be more meaningful if I could have an additional $8,000 to $10,000 a year in my salary. Anybody agree with that? Well, we were going to hand it out after service, but I guess you don't want it. I want to be like Oprah. Everybody gets a car! Thank you, Ford. $8,000 to $10,000 would make their life more meaningful. Now, here's the interesting fact. They followed those people in their lives, and when their earning potential increased $8,000 to $10,000, guess what their response was? I just need a little bit more. As a matter of fact, the Wall Street Journal did a research of the top 6 earning CEOs in our country, asking them this question: what is your greatest fear? And every one of those CEOs responded that I wouldn't have enough. And when they asked a follow-up question, what would be enough? They responded, just a little bit more. You know, wherever you find yourself this morning, searching for something in your life, you are giving your attention to something. You get up and something motivates you every day to get up and do something with your life. Maybe it's a job, maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's a career, but something is moving you through your existence where you give everything you have for that, and it totally captivates your thinking. You could be in a movie theater and something come on the screen and it makes you reflect about that. And whatever that is in your life, Solomon had it all, and comes back to a scripture that said, whatever that is meaningless. And the truth of the matter is, we all find ourselves coming to that point at some time. Rick Warren, who wrote the book, The Purpose-Driven Life, was asked this question: why do you think it's such a best-selling book? Every NFL team, every major league sport has had their players read the book. What is so impacting about a book called The Purpose-Driven Life? Here's what Rick Warren said. He said, emptiness is a universal disease. So in our search for significance, in our search to find who knows what, I want to give you 3 things this morning, and I want you to hear me. These are not just 3 points that a pastor, a preacher, a speaker would throw out to you and say, hey, there's 3 points for your program. Take your crossword puzzle home and life will be great. You see, I started this message by letting you know this is something that I literally feel has been tattooed on my heart and my spirit. Why? Because in my going and in my coming, it seems that this passes me more than any other topic, more than any other subject in my relationships with people that I come in contact with. It is this search for significance, this search for understanding, this search for answering the question, God, why am I here? You might be here and have all the money in the world, and I guarantee you when you lay your head down on your pillow at night, you ask, there's got to be more than this. There has to be more than living than me getting up and going to a job. There has to be more than living than people wanting my autograph. There has to be more than living than me just getting up and people being amazed at who I am. So what is it? I want you to follow me and see these 3 things. And today, hopefully, we all can apply these things. And I promise you, based on God's word, not mine, that literally your life will be transformed the way you see and interact with people if you'll take these 3 things. Not just write them in an insert, not just walk out the door and say, well, we had church today. But if you will begin to see these things come alive in your life will change. Number 1, watch this. Recognize the reality of eternity. The Hebrew writer said in chapter 12, verse 1, this, watch this. Do you see what this means? The word literally says in the NIV, therefore. Anytime you see the word therefore, you have to understand why it's therefore. And I'm going to show you in just a second, but look what he says here in this verse. He says, therefore, all these pioneers who blazed the way, all these veterans cheering us on, it means we'd better get on with it. Strip down, start running, not literally, and never quit. No extra spiritual fat, no parasitic sins. You say, what is he talking about? The NIV says it this way: to throw off those hindrances, those things that would easily entangle us, and run. You see, he's talking about the chapter that comes before, when we put it in context of what the Hebrew writer is saying, he's talking about chapter 11. And you know what chapter 11 is about? It's the great faith chapter. It's all those men and women who have lived their life. It is those ones who are cheering us on in the stands and seeing us right now and saying, you can do it, keep going, I made it, you can make it too. And we go to Hebrews chapter 11, and it gives us the very definition of what this faith is in verse 1. It says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. It means you and I come to God as a believer, and watch this, we see things as they will be, here it is, not as they are. That whatever you're facing right now, if you will begin to recognize the reality of eternity in your life and not just the temporal, if you would allow the faith that has saved you to rise up within you, that in your going and in your coming, you would begin to see things differently. Why? Because your faith would change the direction of your life. Why? Because you have a God who is in control of the things you do not see. Whether it's a medical report, whether it's your last paycheck, whether it's a career search, whether it's a relationship, God sees it. I brought this as an illustration this morning because I think it helps us understand the recognition of eternity. I mean, we could just imagine just for a moment that this rope recognized eternity. That's eternity. Eternity's probably longer than that. It just goes over to the sub. But that's our eternity for illustration. And right here on the end of the rope is about a 3.5, 4-inch piece of black tape. That's your life. This is where we live our lives. This is where we make our decisions. This is where God gives us the opportunity. This is us right here on October the 6th, right there. If we could go way down with a microscopic and see it, we would see October 6th. We would see a theater. We would see people sitting in chairs. We would be sitting here at 11:09. And this would be our lives right now. And you know where most of us spend our lives? Right here. Thinking about that part. Oh, if I could just work a job long enough, if I can make enough money, I'll have a nest egg put away. Oh, I can see myself on a beach somewhere with my feet in the sand. Oh, it'll be a wonderful time. Oh, I'm building my dream house. If I could just have that. And what do? We focus on this and forget this. When the Bible is very clear that how you live your life with this determines what you'll be doing in this. And yet we come together in buildings like this and we sing these songs, where he leads me, I will follow. And in here we do. Until we walk out there and somebody looks at you and says, what about this? Aren't you concerned about this? And we listen to talk shows, don't we? Because they got it all figured out. I mean, if God can't tell you what to do, Pierce Morgan can. I mean, surely he'll get there as a talking head and he will explain to you what you have to do here. And fear grips us and we try to grab all those things and we work ourselves silly because all we can do is focus on this. And we lose sight of recognizing the reality of eternity in our lives. Val and I have several things we do on the side. Somebody always asks me, what do you do? And my response always is, depends on what day of the week it is. Right now I'm in a musical theater and I'm the Scrooge. Bah humbug. I'm practicing, Aaron, see that? He's a mean guy. I also have an AV business and we do outdoor movie events for cities. We do Belmont, a lot of colleges, and we have these big inflatable screens. You go out and, like today, if it was night, we could go out and watch the Titans game on a big 30-foot screen. Be like this, man, outside. And that has led us to do some other events in cities across the country. And we were in Cave City, Kentucky last week. I thought Cave City, Kentucky was a place where you stopped to get gas to go north. They have a downtown. So we're going there to set up our lemonade concessions. Lemonade, popcorn, cotton candy. Guys, confession time. I'm a carny. If you wonder what they look like, here he is. So we set it up. We got our lemonade flag in the air, and I'm praying to God for 95-degree heat. I want tongues hanging out. Oh, I need lemonade. Right this way. The event starts. There's about 5,000 people. Who knew? In Cave City. Walking up and down the streets, and there's craft people selling things, and there's a guy across from me who sells the deep-fried Twinkies, the deep-fried oatmeal pies. Yes. And I look across the street, and there is an ice cream truck painted like a cow. That is cool. So being the entrepreneur that I am, I leave the lemonade stand and I walk across to see this truck looking like a cow. And there are two kids in the front window serving out ice cream to those people coming by. And I come up to the window and I said, is the owner of this truck here? Because you probably aren't the owner. And the little girl, about 14 years of age, said, yes, our mom, and pointed in the back of the truck. She stood about 6 feet from the window having this conversation with me. I said, are you the owner? And she said, yes, I was just admiring the truck. It looks great. This is fantastic. Where'd you have it done? And she spent the entire time conversing with me at 6 foot away from the window. I thought, that's weird. So I said, well, I appreciate it, and I'm just vending down here. I'll go back to my lemonade stand and wish I had an ice cream truck. So I go back, and I got about 3 feet away from her truck, and I heard the back door of that truck open up. And she came running out. She said, can I talk to you for a second? And I said, sure. Me, watch, living here, thinking she's going to say, would you like to buy it? Says to me, this really isn't my business. You see, my husband owns a lawn and garden business, and he bought this truck so we could do things as a family. That's my son and my daughter inside the truck. My husband's at home on the couch because he's been diagnosed with brain cancer. He has 9 tumors. Probably won't make it through this summer. And I stopped in the midst of selling lemonade, in the midst of a Cave City Proud Days. This 40-something mom comes out of a truck and says, I don't know what to do. My husband, you see, is laying on a couch, and this was his dream for us to be here as a family so we could travel around and do this kind of thing and make extra money. And that's my daughter in there, and she knows her dad's dying. And that's my son. He used to look at my dad as someone of strength. And immediately I put my arm around her and I said, it's going to be okay. And I grabbed my phone and I said, listen, there are several doctors that I've had to help me in my life. I want to give you some people that you need to talk to. And all of a sudden she began to open up because there wasn't this threat, and all of a sudden something changed. And I'll tell you what it was. It was the reflection and it was the response of recognition of eternity. You see, I wasn't just there to sell lemonade, but God looks at our lives where we are and he says, you may think you're there. You may think you're in that 4 inches of your life. You may think it's only October 6th and this is where you're to be living. God says, no, I want you to think of your life in eternity. I want you to see the greater purpose. I'm going to place a lemonade stand across from a cow truck because she needs to hear it. I wonder what your cow truck is. I wonder who sits across that cubicle from you, who walks to that copy machine every day, buying into the lie that that's all there is to life. And God says, I have this. You see, I don't want my 18-year-old son to grow up. I don't want my 14-year-old daughter to grow up and say, this is what life is about. Get as much as you get so you can live to this. That's crazy. When I could take them and say, Oh, Zach, Peyton, let me introduce you to a God who can take your life even in this. And if you'll hand it over to him, he'll show you a life of thrills, chills, and romance. You'll see things you could never see on your own because he's in control of that. You see, if I could say anything to you this morning that would gravitate into your spirit, tattoo itself on your heart, that you could walk out of this room and see your life differently, if you could give up the search for all the stuff, as Solomon said, that is meaningless, you would begin to look around. You would see yourself differently in that restaurant. You would see yourself different in that doctor's office. You would see yourself different in that classroom. You would see yourself different in that business. Because you're not in business just to be in business. You are in business because you are God's representative in the business community. So when you cut a deal, they see what God looks like. You are not just a school teacher. You are God's representation in the education community. So they get to see what God looks like when God shares education. You're not just a mom, a dad. You are God's representation. So that wherever you go, your life is not fixed on the small amount of time you have to live here, but you're focused on eternity and how your life will make a difference. Every Wednesday morning, 7 a.m., I meet with a group of guys. Matter of fact, I met a guy in the early services. I do that down here in Franklin on Fridays. You know those guys, Aaron, like at Hardee's, the old guys? Yeah, it's awesome. I used to walk by those guys and go, I want to be in that group. You know, they're drinking strong coffee and talking some great stories. Well, we're not that old in our group, 40-somethings. So we walk by with our spritzy coffee. They're drinking theirs all black. Oh, not me, it's mocha. Different generation. And we sit at our table and we come with no agenda. Every Wednesday morning, 7 a.m. Last week we were at Shoney's. They still have a breakfast bar. We're sitting back there, and it started with one other guy and me. This one other guy came to me and he said, hey, I want to start a ministry called Plant and Water Ministries. I said, what is that, Brian? Brian, I just gave you a plug, by the way. He said, I want to just be a nonprofit that helps other nonprofits. See, he's been around Nashville so long, he knows so many people. All he wants to do is just be a nonprofit that helps other nonprofits find out what their need is. He goes, I want you to meet with me every Wednesday and hold me accountable to it. I said, all right. So we'd meet at first Panera. I'd eat my bagel and I'd listen to him and I'd say, so what'd you do this week with Plant and Water? And if he didn't do anything, I'd beat him in the head. What do you mean you didn't do anything? And every week he'd say the same thing. Beat me in the head again next week. All of a sudden our group started to grow. He goes, hey, I have a cousin who really would benefit from this. I said, well, invite him. We don't have an agenda. We're not just reading through the book of Romans. We're just meeting. We're just talking. That group is up to 14 people now. We have a college professor from Vanderbilt. It really makes you think about how you talk when he's in front of you. Make sure your adjectives are correct. I was telling the guy when he was telling about his group on Friday, we had a guy who buys wholesale in China. He spends 2 weeks in China, then he comes back to the States and he works for these companies and he redistributes it. He came to one meeting and he's sitting beside me. I hadn't even really met this guy. And we're all talking about our kids and life because that's what we're there for. We're just talking about whatever comes up because we're there because we want more than that. I want more than that because this is meaningless. And out of the blue, he says, no questions. Out of the blue, he says, I spent my whole life looking for recognition from my dad. Hi, I'm Scott. Why did he do that? Because there wasn't anybody on that table who was perfect. And everybody had learned to come together. You know why sometimes we can't get it right in church? Because we all come with agendas. Have you ever noticed how perfect we are and nice we are at church? I used to love this as a pastor. I would go in, how you doing? Doing good. Really? I'm good. No one ever has a bad day at church. Blessed of the Lord. Great, great, great. You doing great? I'm doing great. Then you get in your car and you kill your kids. Am I telling the truth? The only reason that guy could share that was because There was openness. He saw other guys sharing about their struggles and he went, holy crap. I just said crap. Holy crap, I just found an open place to share. What's your view of eternity this morning? Is it just some place when you die? Catch this, because I just heard the Holy Spirit give this to me. Is it just some place to go when you die? Or does it change your now? Does your view of eternity change your life now? Secondly, we have to reflect on what really matters. The Hebrew writer says, keep your eyes on Jesus, who both began and finished this race we're in. Study how he did it, because he never lost sight of where he was headed. That exhilarating finish in and with God. He says, listen, if you want to really find, you want to seek your significance in life, if you want to search for you know what, reflect on what really matters in life. Not the things that occupy your time. Because I can guarantee you it's going to be in there. Because we are bombarded in our culture with, I got to look good, I got to feel good, and I got to get the goods. This past week, that guy I told you has the Plant and Water Ministries thing. He wanted me to go to a rehabilitation center. It's in a house for 18 and above. Kids, basically, because I'm getting old. Now I know why my mom and dad used to call us all kids. Who are struggling with drug addictions. One of them I met this past week from Brentwood. I went to that house and I sat down with the director. And I'm sitting there in this house. And this kid looks as normal as you and I. I said, man, how did it start with you? He said, I was an athlete in Brentwood. He said, I got hurt and I started taking pain medication. And it wasn't enough. And then my girlfriend's mom started giving me Oxycontin. And it wasn't enough. And here I am. He goes, Scott, my dad bought me a brand new Sea-Doo for my 18th birthday. I was like, dang, my dad got me a birthday cake. He said, I sold that Sea-Doo for money just so I could have more of it. Here he sat in a home with everything taken from him. In his coming and in his going, he was in a van with other guys, and that's where he would go. Court ordered to sit there and live there. You see, we are taught that in our society. You got to feel good. You got to look good. And so we have billions of dollars that we spray things all over our face to get rid of a wrinkle. Why? Because we are so fixated on that you forgot that. It's no wonder the church looks insignificant in American culture. Go overseas. You want to see it making an impact? Because that's all they can think about. Why? Because that's all they have. Their eternity is their reality. Because in a moment's time, they could walk in this room and mow them all down. You see, you keep your eyes on Christ. You keep fixed on the one thing that makes the difference. I saw this movie clip, and I got to hurry, but I saw this movie clip, and it's so important you need to see it. It's from a very funny movie, City Slickers. I love Billy Crystal. And they're in the beginning of this movie, they talk about it. Man, if we could just have a do-over. He's in a midlife crisis. Man, I just need a do-over. And so his buddies, they go out west, and they're going to live on this farm, and they're going to do something totally different in their lives because they're trying to find it. And in the midst of this journey, they find themselves in a campfire. So I just want you to take a look at it because I think it'll help us to focus. Watch this. I love it. Paul said, yes, all the things I once thought were so important are gone from my life compared to the high privilege of knowing Christ as my master. Everything I once thought I had going for me is insignificant dog dung. I've dumped it all in the trash so that I could embrace Christ and be embraced by him. I didn't want some petty inferior, you got to catch this because this is where it's the church. I didn't want some petty, inferior brand of righteousness that comes from keeping a list of rules. When I could get, here it is, the robust kind that comes from trusting Christ. You see, the main thing for you this morning and for us to understand that we need to focus on Christ, and we could put this on the dashboards of our cars, the mirrors in our bathrooms. I hope the Titans have it in their locker room even today. You ready? The main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. Not to walk out of here and say, well, we printed inserts and we got a service and we got some music and we got a church now, we got people. Because if we do all of that and we miss the love and the passion and the desire that we have for Jesus, Revelation says you have forsaken your first love. He calls it a Lucifer type fall. That regardless of all the things that you can do in church, if you do not focus on what is important in your life, if you don't look to God and say, He has to be the focus, everything else will be out of context. Everything else won't matter. Everything else will be a mess. That's why Matthew says, seek first His kingdom and His righteousness. Watch, and all these things will be added unto you. The problem is, we don't trust Him. We got it figured out. See? I never understood how when you get saved, you can trust Christ with your eternity, but not your next paycheck, but not your next car payment, but not your next job. Oh, I gotta find it. It's in the paper. I gotta find it. I gotta go. And we live our lives like we're crazy. This is crazy. Finally, we got to respond to God. I mean, if we really want significance, we have to respond to Him. And here's how you respond to Him. You have to know who He really is. I asked the early service if there was somebody in the Bible who you could say really got it, really understood that God was in control. Who would it be? And no one wanted to shout out any answers. I know it's church. We're kind of quiet. So, I would throw some things out, like Peter, be a good one. He got it. He knew God was in control, finally. Paul, that would be a good one. He'd be a good one. And in church, we'd say, Jesus, yep. I believe anybody, he got it. He knew his Father was in control. But I think when I reflect on Scripture, the one person that I read about that I think really understood and gets it. I mean, if you're going to respond to Him, this is important. Because if you don't trust Him, you're not going to respond to Him. You're going to walk out of here and live your life the way you want to live it. You're going to keep seeking your whole life, searching, and you'll live with reward or regret. But if you really, really trust Him, I think it was King Nebuchadnezzar. You see, I put a scripture in your outline, and I'm going to get to it because I want you to see in context why that's there. King Nebuchadnezzar, this guy who's the king of the most powerful providence on the planet at his day. If you look back in verse 28, it says this, listen to this. All this happened to King Nebuchadnezzar 12 months later as the king was walking on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon. This is verse 28. He said, is not this great Babylon I have built as the royal residence by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty? You see the arrogance? Oh, if you could see my portfolio. What I've built. My retirement is set. Well, in 2008, some people found that wasn't the truth. Even as the words were on his lips, a voice from heaven came. This is what is decreed for you, king. Your royal authority has been taken from you. You will be driven away from people, and you will live with wild animals, and you will eat grass like the ox. 7 times will pass until you acknowledge that the Most High is sovereign over the kingdoms of earth and gives them to anyone he wishes. You ready for this? Verse 31. Immediately what had been said about Nebuchadnezzar was fulfilled. He was driven away from people and ate grass like an ox. His body was drenched with the dew of heaven until his hair grew like the feathers of an eagle and his nails like the claws of a bird. I mean, you're talking about a king. Do you really think that God can make somebody lose their mind in such a way that they're insane, that they're bent over like an ox, that they're eating grass in a field? Yeah, I do. Because I believe what it says. Which is more difficult for you to believe, that God could save your soul or God could bend a man over to eat grass? I mean, if you're really going to respond to God, you have to trust him. And look what happens. In verse 35, he says, all the people of the earth are regarded as nothing. He does as it pleases. This is Nebuchadnezzar talking about God. With the powers of heaven and the people of the earth, no one can hold back his hand or say to him, what have you done? What Nebuchadnezzar says is, listen, I got it all wrong. I thought I had control of all this. And all of a sudden everything is gone and I'm eating grass like an oxen and I recognize who God really is. Folks, do you realize how powerful God is? We could take all the churches in Nashville. No, forget that. We could take all the churches in the Southeast. We could all come together and we could all agree, God, we think you're doing it wrong. It doesn't matter. We could gather all the Christian theologians together in a room and they could write a little thesis about what God should be doing next in the end times. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what Anderson Cooper says. It doesn't matter what Pierce Morgan says. I hate to say it. It doesn't matter what Oprah thinks. Folks, he does as he pleases. If he wants to place you across the street from a lady in a milk building and says, that's where I want you to go talk to her about ice cream, he'll place you there. The question is, will you know it? Nebuchadnezzar didn't know it. He was too arrogant to know it. He said, I'm here to make lemonade. I ain't walking across that street for her. Until God humbled him. And look what it says in your outline. At the same time, I was given back my mind, my sanity. I was given back my majesty and splendor, making my kingdom shine. All the leaders and important people came looking for me. I was reestablished as a king in my kingdom, watch this, and became greater than ever. And that's why I'm singing. I, Nebuchadnezzar, singing and praising the King of heaven. Everything he does is right, and he does it the right way. He knows how to turn a proud person into a humble man or woman. He says, I get it. I've got to turn to God because it doesn't matter what I do here. I can work my whole life. I need a do-over, God. I need a do-over. I want to focus on this and not this. And I wonder in this room, how many are breathless, are fatigued from chasing something that the TV tells you you have to have. And God says, if you just turn to me, I already have it. If you really trust me, the question is, do we? I want you to bow your heads this morning, and just as we close, I just want you to ask yourself this question. Do I need a do-over? I don't want to wait till my end of my life. I want to seek it and find it now. Do you need a do-over? If you could just rest in his presence right now for a second, what would he say to you? Father, I pray in this room for that one who's fatigued. Lord, they may even feel that they're insane in their mind, working like an ox in a field, day after day, week after week, and it piles up. And God, they're searching for something, who knows what. God, would you show them right now what that what is? that you saved them for more than just going into eternity, but you saved them, God, that they might make a difference for eternity. I pray for that one now, that they might cry out to you and say, give me a do-over. And that, Lord, your Holy Spirit would be at these exits handing those cards out, that we would have a do-over today, and tomorrow will be different. And we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.